everybody. Jeff Cowan here from Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk, and I'm back with a new edition of my podcast entitled Write Service, Write Your Own Paycheck, the path to making over $100,000 a year when writing service. And you know, at this very recording, 20% of you who are writing service in the automotive industry that live in the United States of America, Canada, and Australia are making at least $100,000 a year or more, but 80% of you are not. So what do we do about that? Well, I recommend you keep listening to my podcast, watch my podcast, read my articles, follow me online, because by doing so, you will learn the tactics, techniques, word tracks, and all the processes and stuff you need to become the absolute best that you can be and join that $100,000 a year or more club. If you're going to be doing it all day long, why wouldn't you want to maximize the opportunities, the way I look at it? Well, I come with you today, back with a new podcast, like I said, and this one is entitled Discipline versus Fear and Greed. Now, here's what this is based on. You know, recently I wrote an article, and recently I presented a podcast where I told you, as you began to reopen your business and rebuild it, that you needed to exercise extreme discipline. Extreme discipline and adhering to your processes in what has made you successful to this point. And I told you to be very careful with the amount of customers you brought back in, and I told you to be very careful to make sure, again, that you follow the processes that have made you what you are today. But it seems to have fallen on deaf ears, because here's what we're learning. We're learning that still 50% of the service departments out there are not yet fully staffed, but those same departments are bringing in vehicles now as things start to open back up like they were fully staffed. The other 50% of the businesses out there that are fully staffed are bringing in, on average, from the best we can tell, 30% more cars than their staff can handle. All right? Now, this is a recipe for disaster. Now, here's why. You know, prior to this virus thing starting, most of you were very, very good at sticking to the rule that a service advisor should write no more than 15 to 18 repair orders a day. And what made the difference between the 15 to 18 max was basically based on the skill level of the advisors. While I find most can handle just about 15, some of the elite advisors, that 20% I'm talking about, they're writing making $100,000 a year, they typically have the skill to handle as many as 18, but most 15, and most of you adhere to that. But since you're reopening, we're finding that you now are allowing your advisors to write 19 to 23 repair orders a day, and it's just too many. Because by allowing this to happen, you're killing a great opportunity, not only in the present, but in the future. Okay? Now, let me share with you what I mean. We're going to go out of the car industry for a second. I want to share with you a story that recently happened. You know, there's a locally owned steakhouse here in town, in the little town of Rancho Santa Margarita, and this place is the place to go if you want a great steak. I mean, this guy has gotten it down. People literally line up out the door to get into this guy's restaurants during normal times. But, like all restaurants during the virus, he was forced to shut down. Now, that went on for a couple of months, and he did have a delivery service that he did. He did have a pickup menu available if you wanted to. But then he got word that it was okay to reopen his business. So just before Father's Day out here in Southern California, he was allowed to open his business and seat 25 people. For Father's Day, or 25% of the normal people that capacity that he had in the past. Now, with Father's Day coming up that same week, he knew that he was going to have a big rush for customers, and he wanted to keep everybody happy. So here's what he did. He came up with a special Father's Day menu. He booked all the reservations he was allowed to book for his in-store stuff. And then he had a special, again, Father's Day menu for pickup orders. Now, the rule was, because he was going to limit this, he said that you had to call in at least 24 hours ahead of time to place your order, tell them not only what you wanted, but when you wanted it, so when you got there, they were ready to go. So my wife and my daughter decided that for our son-in-law and myself, and being Father's Day, they wanted to order from this restaurant because it's a very special restaurant. They wanted to be a special day, right? And they didn't want to stand around and cook and all that stuff, or have us cook. So my wife gets on the phone 30 hours, almost a day and a half prior to picking up the food. She orders the food. Now, it's a fairly large order because you've got me and my wife, you've got my daughter and son-in-law and the 2 grandkids and a couple other people, so it's a fairly large order. as she was ordering, I happened to be standing there, and she had her phone on speaker, and when she got through placing the order, the person on the other end said, you know, we're really excited about this, and we got to tell you, we're so excited about being reopened, and we're so excited about this Father's Day thing that we're really almost overwhelmed. We are blown away with how the community is supporting us, and we're blown away with the number of requests we've gotten. We've never had this many orders on any day, let alone it be Father Day. I knew right then and there, I suspected there was going to be a problem. And you know what? I was right. Because the next day, 30 hours later, when my daughter and wife went to the restaurant, they insisted on going because it was Father's Day. They wanted me and my son-in-law and the grandkids and everybody else to stay home, right, and enjoy the day. They went to the restaurant to pick up the order, and guess what? It was not ready. It was, not only was it not ready, it hadn't even been started. They had 30 hours to get this thing ready, and it hadn't even been started. Now, what they did to make up for it, the restaurant, is they gave my wife and daughter a free cocktail, but it did not solve the problem, and it did not solve the issues that they were having. Because as my daughter and wife sat there, they noticed that there were at least 10 other people, separate people, with 10 separate orders that were experiencing the exact same thing. As my daughter and wife sat there and watched this happen, they noticed all the employees running around doing nothing but putting out fires, and it was clear to them that they were clearly overwhelmed. They'd overbooked their business. Now, one of the things that my wife had done, we didn't know this, but as a surprise, they had gotten us a reservation. She had gotten me and her a reservation for the following Friday. My daughter, doing the same thing for her husband and her family, had gotten a reservation for the following Saturday. But seeing how all these people were running around in there and they weren't prepared for this, it gave the impression that they just weren't ready to reopen. So my wife and daughter, as they were sitting there, canceled those reservations. Now, as it turns out, they weren't the only ones that experienced that, because over the next several days on social media, it became very apparent that many people had that same problem, and many people had done the same thing and booked future reservations, and many people canceled those reservations because the general feeling was it was going to be several weeks before this restaurant was ready to reopen. And man, did their reputation take a ding. And I couldn't understand why this was allowed to happen. They spent years building this business. They spent years building the reputation that they not only delivered the highest quality of food, but the highest quality of service. So why did he let this happen? Well, I think that the reason he did this is maybe because he was a little greedy. Okay, I think that he did this because he let fear come into play. I think he was afraid that if he told anybody no, he couldn't serve them dinner, he couldn't have a pickup order, that they would never want to come back, and he was wrong. I mean, if he would have stuck to his guns and done what he built off his business, building great customer service with great products, and once he reached the number that he knew he could handle, and then started telling everybody else, I'm sorry, we've taken as many orders as we can no longer help you out on Father's Day. Would there have been some people disappointed? Surely there would have been. But I don't think they would have been any more disappointed than any other week when things were normal, when you'd call up and ask for a reservation, they said they were sold out. You're disappointed, but it doesn't mean you're going to come back. But by doing this, he set out the vibe that we just weren't ready to reopen. Now, in doing this, he either, again, got greedy and took in these orders, but his people clearly weren't prepared to handle. They weren't trained for that, or again, he was just afraid that he was going to lose these people. I don't think he would have. All right? So, in doing this podcast for you here, I want you to not make the same mistake. Because coincidentally, during that same week, I'd taken my vehicle in to get it serviced at the car dealership I go to, and they too were slowly reopening. Now, when I first got there, when I made the check-in time to go in, it seemed like everything was going to be okay, but as soon as I pulled onto the service drive, I sensed there was going to be trouble. Now, you have to understand that when I go to service drives, I don't walk in with my chest all popped out saying, hey, I'm Jeff Cowan, I train advisors, I expect whatever. As a matter of fact, I rarely even bring it up because I don't want to talk about work when I'm not at work. So it's not that I'm overly picky, but when I pulled up, I knew there was going to be trouble not only for me, but for everybody else. Why? Number one, the things that were missing were the greeters and porters. This place was famous for having greeters and porters that were at your car like that. They were asking the questions, making sure your advisor knew they were there, you knew you were there, and within seconds your advisor would walk over, they'd hand them off, and everything was great. They'd dress your car, the whole thing, right? Those people were gone. I also noticed that instead of the regular 5 advisors being there, there were only 2. I also noticed that when I pulled in 5 minutes prior to my check-in time being ready, not only were these 2 advisors helping 2 other customers, but there were 2 customers per advisor ahead of me. So immediately it started falling apart. And as we're standing there waiting, more people came in every 10 minutes as the clock ticked. So we not only had a bad write-up experience because there was no time to build rapport, there's no time to walk around vehicles, there's no time to make presentations, and there's no time to look for future work. Not only did they miss a huge opportunity there, but getting these people to text and give me updates throughout the day was what was going on with my car was like pulling teeth, and this was not like them. Okay? And as a matter of fact, my car ended up being there a day longer than I felt it probably should have been there. Now here's the thing. It's the same thing. If they, when I got online and when I called in to set up my check-in time, had they told me, look, we've already got full capacity on that day, but we could get you in on this day or that day, or we've already got full capacity this week, I can get you in next week, I wouldn't have been mad. I wouldn't have gone anywhere else. As a matter of fact, I would have preferred that, and I would have preferred to show up when things were more under control like I'm used to, where there were greeter and porters. And even if there only was 2 service advisors, there was only the amount of customers that those 2 service advisors could not only handle writing up, but working with throughout the visit, you know? And it's just real simple. You know, just like when I go to that restaurant, just like when I go to the car dealership for service, I expect the best. I pay a lot of money for these services. I pay a lot of money for these repairs. I paid a lot of money for that food. I don't expect anybody to bend over and kiss my butt or anything like that, but I do expect to get what I paid for. It's kind of like when you go to Disney out here. I mean, Disneyland doesn't allow the guy in the Mickey Mouse costume to take off his head and walk around the park because it's too hot. Why? Because people don't want to see that. What people want to see is Mickey Mouse looking just like he does and acting just like he does when he's in the cartoons. Okay? I mean, they stick to their guns, and by sticking to their guns, the people get what they pay for, and that's what your customers want. You got to have discipline to stick to the plans and the processes that got you where you are today. I mean, if you want to be, you can't let fear, hey, if I don't bring everybody in, they're going to go someplace else, bully you into bringing in more people that you can handle. You can't let greed, because when you bring all those people in, it's just like when I went in. They didn't have time to work with me. They didn't have time to upsell, and I shudder to think of how much business that dealership lost because they didn't have time to do their jobs, because they got greedy and they were afraid that they were going to lose people. You know, so what am I talking about here? When you allow your people to write up 19 to 23 repair orders, let me explain to you what happens, because here's what it is. When you stick to your guns and you're disciplined and you allow your advisors to write up 15 to 18 repair orders based on their skill level, it gives them enough time, okay, it gives them enough time to get you good surveys, because they can spend the time with the customer. It gives them enough time to sell to sell your dealership, to sell your service department, to sell themselves, so you can get the customer retention. It gives them enough time to walk around vehicles so they can point things out, make a benefit-based 6-step presentation so they can sell your product and services as needed by the customer. It gives them time to sell value so you get a high effective labor rate, and it gives them time to handle the customers and set up realistic expectations so there's no disgruntled customers and no heat cases. You get those 5 things when you are disciplined and only have your service advisors writing up 15 to 18 repair orders, because here's what happens. When you let your service advisors write up 19 to 20, when they take that one step further, you'll lose one of the 5. You'll lose the retention, the survey score, the effective labor rate, the repair order average, or the sale. If you allow them to write up 21 orders, you'll lose 2 of the 5 things. If you allow them to write up 23 repair orders, you'll lose 3 of the 5 things. And once you get above 23, it all comes down to a game of survival. How can I write up as many customers as I can with the least amount of heat by the end of the day and make the most amount of money? It simply becomes a game of survival. And when your service advisors switch into the game of survival, your business will suffer. You're not going to win today in the present. You're not going to impress anybody today, and they're certainly not going to want to come back, because you're going to give the impression that you were not prepared, that you either feared or you were greedy. So here's what I say. Take a tip from Disneyland. Take a tip from Mickey Mouse. Keep your head on your shoulders no matter how hot it gets. And exercise discipline. Sing the song that your people came to see you sing. Do the dance your people came to see you dance. Because who knows, by sticking to your guns and having discipline and singing your song the way it should be sang and doing your dance, your business may become the most magical place on earth. It worked for Disney, and it can work for you. So again, discipline, discipline, discipline. 15 to 18 repair orders. Stick to your processes. That's what will win the day. That's what will help you in the present, and that's what will help you rebound from this in the future. I mean, it's the only way, true way to do it if you want to be the victor in all categories. Hey, my name's Jeff Cowan. I have a company called Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk, and I love talking to you and doing these podcasts. I love working in fixed operations. We have a lot of services. We have workshops. We have in-store training. We have virtual training. Call us at 1-800-248-2931, and we can get you set up for that. We can show you how to have the discipline to get these numbers. If you want to talk to me personally, dial my personal number, 317-506-1003, 317-506-1003. You call that 800 number, whoever picks up the phone, they'll talk to you right now. You call my number personally. I travel a lot. I do a lot of workshops and conventions. Those are all starting to pick back up. It may take me 24 hours to call you back, but if you call me, I will call you back because I love talking to you. So with that, God bless you all. I wish you Godspeed. I'll be back next week with another podcast, and until then, make it a great day. Talk to you soon.